So in 1910, no European or American country had a government that was more than 12% of GDP. And now what are they? 50%. And that's why there's no growth and disaster all around. Because whatever the government touches is a complete failure.
People go to school to study how to be a politician. It used to be public service that you did once you'd made your fortune, and you went to give something back and you went into public service because you didn't need to be paid.
Bankers in here, you should know how you squeeze the clients and steal money.
Would you like me to explain to you Swiss banking? My friend said, I would like that very much. He said, well, listen, the idea of Swiss banking is to take your money and our experience and turn it into our money and your experience. And that's about the best explanation of Swiss banking I've ever heard.
Within 10 years, big changes will occur, and the dollar will no longer be the reserve currency.
Wow.
Within 10 years.
Don't worry about the price so much. Look at what people are saying. Look at the fact that the most price-insensitive buyers in the world and central banks are buying as much gold as they can get their hands on. And these guys can literally print money out of thin air and spend it on anything they want, including monkey JPEGs, but they are choosing to buy gold with it. If they feel a need to own gold, you better believe we need to own gold too.
I thought we'd start because I want to get your perspective. You're based in Thailand, and we've been speaking so much about the state of the United States, the state of Europe. What is the vibe, and what are people saying in Asia? What's the vision of what's going on here, Marc?
Well, in Asia, surprisingly, the mood is not so bad. I mean, there are countries that are failed states like Thailand. But the funny thing is, people, the economists and, the data miners, the statisticians and so forth, they called it a failed state. But surprisingly, everybody in the world wants to go to Thailand and relax in Pattaya and in Phuket, especially at night. And this is and the many retirees, they all want to go to Thailand because life is very pleasant and relaxing. So in general, in Asia, the mood is actually not that bad. And the economies, they're not booming, but we don't have the social problems that you have here in Europe, in European cities. And the mood is much more optimistic. And there is economic growth. It maybe doesn't show up that much, but say around 4% growth there is in all the countries of Southeast Asia. In Vietnam is probably about 8%. And the stock markets have, for most part, outperformed the US this year. We've been quite optimistic about Hong Kong and Hong Kong property shares because they became very inexpensive a year ago, and they've done very well. But nothing has done as well as precious metals.
Of course.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Thanks to the conference last year.
There we go.
Yes.
That's what said it.
But you were not here.
I was busy convincing central banks to keep buying gold, Marc.
Okay. That's very commendable. You weren't all that successful with the Western dumbed-down central bankers.
On that note of perspective...
I hope there are quite a few here.
Well, let's see. I met somebody from the Turkish central bank, and I said thank you for moving the gold price up. Grant, just speaking about perspective, and I find it interesting because you're based in London, right? And from what the news we get in America is that London is burning, you can't go there, it's so dangerous. What's it like there right now?
can I come on to that in one second? I just want to touch on something Mark said there about
Yeah.
Asia, because I think it's really important. You know, Japan is a perfect example of this. For 20 years, if you were anywhere in the West, you heard that Japan was an absolute disaster, deflation, aging population. And every time I went to Japan, Tokyo was absolutely booming, and it continues to boom to this day. It's an extraordinary place to go and visit. So Asia, there are some phenomenal stories that I think here in the West, people don't really understand, and they don't really get reported on because everyone's really that concerned about the US and Europe. So I think
Exactly.
that's worth pointing that out.
Exactly.
With regards to the UK, I am spending a lot more time now to spend some time with my father, and it's my first time back in almost 40 years to kind of be based there. So it's a very different United Kingdom to the one I left in 1989. I, like you, for the best part of the last 5 years of things have unraveled, have been either in the Cayman Islands or traveling in America, reading about it. And so I was kind of half dreading what I would go back to. I mitigated the problem slightly by renting a place in Richmond. If anyone has watched Ted Lasso here, which I'm sure a few of you have, it's this idyllic little village just outside London, which will be literally the last place that anyone will find out that London's burned down and fallen into the sea. So I'm probably the last person to ask. There is certainly some truth to it. The government is a disaster, the finance is a disaster, but that's no news to anybody who lives in any kind of Western democracy. Mark's point about immigration is definitely a big problem in the UK because it's been unchecked and it's causing a lot of tension amongst the population. But you know what happens from here? They're very close to the point of no return. This government is seemingly doing everything they can to screw the country to the wall. Maybe they'll succeed, but as you know, Pierre said this morning that Americans have this habit of staring into the abyss and then stepping back. Or as Churchill put it, Americans can always be relied on to do the right thing after they've tried everything else. I hope the Brits have the same thing going for them. It's the first time we've been this close to the abyss since 1976. Then we needed a bailout from the IMF. We're heading that way, and I don't see anything that will stop that, but I live in hope.
Well, that's a good point, and I want to ask Marc this because Pierre Lassonde, was optimistic regarding the U.S., saying they always look like they're getting to the edge of the cliff, they're going to fall over, and then by some miracle, they don't. Your thoughts, Marc, on, do you really think America's coming to an end game here, an end point?
Yes, I think they came to an end game a long time ago. If you look at the standards of living of ordinary people, by and large, the typical, this also in Europe, the typical household earns less inflation adjusted than, say, 30 years ago, and the standards of living is down. There's no question about it. The young people, you look at the housing statistic, yes, everybody says it's great, house prices go up and so forth. Yes, for people like myself, I own a house, then the price goes up. But for people that want to rent and want to buy a house, the young people, they all can't afford it. It's too expensive. And Goldman Sachs, they have charts showing that precisely affordability in the US is at the lowest level ever. There's no question about this. And if you ask me the end game, I'm not sure it's funny, but the reality is this. We live in a financial world. The financial world keeps on printing money and liquefying the system, and the financial world is doing well. So when I started to work, it took the stock market capitalization was in 1970 about 25% of GDP. Now it's 150% of GDP. So it means the financial sector has expanded dramatically. And anyone on Wall Street, that's why Wall Street never criticizes the Fed. They never criticize central banks because they want money printing. They live from money printing. So, because assets go up and the fees go up. But the reality is ordinary people, 70% of Americans, 70% of Swiss and Germans and French, they live less well than 30, 40 years ago. That is the reality.
We'll jump right back to the interview, but this is too important to skip. The real risk today isn't just a market crash or recession, it's the US dollar being reset, revalued, and losing all purchasing power. Prices keep rising, incomes can't keep up, and central banks around the world are buying record levels of gold because they see what's coming. You can't fix the system, but you can step out of the line of fire and position yourself the same way they do, like a central bank, not a common investor. That's why we built the Private Wealth Playbook. It's free and it shows you exactly how to protect your wealth, privacy, and retirement through whatever comes next. So click below or go to DannyReport.com and secure what's rightfully yours. I'd like to get your thoughts specifically on what we're seeing in American cities. I mean, we just had the mayoral elections in New York City, and we all saw how the pendulum has swung completely the other way. Do you feel it's based on the fact that the young are so frustrated that they can't afford anything anymore? Is that the reason that the pendulum swung so left?
But we have the same problem in Zurich. We are a left-wing city. The green communists and the socialists and so forth. And I tell you what, you should all read Schumpeter, because he explains how the capitalistic system will mutate and slowly become a socialist kind of regime, because the academics, they hate the successful businessman who has no education, because they have, titles and all this nonsense, but they never worked in their lives. They sit at universities. And then they are all left, the academics. And the rich people, and I see it I went to a private school in Zurich, to the Freigimi, because my father could afford it. And we didn't qualify for ordinary schools. So anyway, they were all rich people and so forth, and we have class reunions. And I am in the Committee for Neutrality of Switzerland, because I think it's very important that the Swiss do not join the EU, which is a complete failure as an organization, like most political systems nowadays. But it's interesting how these wealthy people, they're not interested. They rather pay their tax and let the government do whatever it is. And a lot of them, that is the problem, a lot of wealthy people in Switzerland, I was with a group the other day, they get subsidies from the government. Mm-hmm. So they vote actually for the socialists, because the socialists are so corrupt that you can pay them, and then they leave you in peace.
Yeah, and Grant, can you just expand on that? Because I'm a little bewildered of how we've got to the point where capitalism is almost a bad word now. And I was at a recent conference and I had a lot of young people ask me, like, why should we, how could you support capitalism, whatnot? Like, how do we get to this point?
Well, I think, was it Frank or Rick or Pierre? Somebody said it yesterday.
Frank.
We hadn't had capitalism for, what do you think, Mark, 50 years? We haven't had real capitalism for 50 odd years now. It's been creeping further and further away to crony capitalism. You don't have bailouts in pure capitalism. You have failure and creative destruction. So the system has been slowly eating itself for 50 years, as it was inevitably going to do once you remove the anchor of sound money from it. If you take that away, if money becomes fake, the system ultimately becomes fake over time. And that's where we are. We do have a borderline communist mayor of New York. Marc talks about the communists here in Zurich. There's a card-carrying one in who's the mayor of the biggest city in the world. He's got an $8.5 billion budget. He's got 8.5 million citizens now that he's responsible for, and he's going to give them everything for free. And he expects all the rich billionaires from Wall Street to stay there. I mean, the whole thing is farcical.
Because for him, he says, well, if you're making over $1 million, we'll just tax you another 20%. Right. It's a rounding number. He's very smug about it.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, it's a rounding number on paper, but in real life, it's $200 grand every $1 million that people are going to leave for that. And I think when Mark makes the point about standard of living and unaffordability for housing, it's true. But the youngsters have given up on that idea of owning a home because it's so far out of reach. So to them, their standard of living, where they're spending every penny they get, and restaurants are full, and they're enjoying their $6 cappuccinos, and they're living their best life.
Right.
They've just, their idea of their best life, ours was owning a home and starting a family.
Yeah.
Theirs isn't, not necessarily because that's not what they want to do, but they've been priced out of it.
Yeah.
And so they've adapted.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense to me that these people would be voted in, because they're selling a story that's very easy to sell to these people.
Marc, let's talk Europe, because you just touched on it there, and I've had multiple conversations with people, including yourself, talking about the demise of Europe, that the European Union will end. I mean, how close is that reality for you, and what does that look like? What do the countries go back to?
I have no idea. I mean, I just don't know. But one thing I want to add to the discussion about capitalism. In the 19th century, the US, they grew in 1800 from 4 million people to 80 million in 1900. So in 100 years, the population multiplied from 4 million to 80. And there was an industrialization, the railroadization, the construction of canals, the telegraph, God knows what. And what happened to prices? They were stable. In 1900, the price level was lower than in 1800 because canals and railroads and refrigeration and so forth, they allowed product prices to go down and transportation costs to go down. And then they had the brilliant idea to introduce in 1913 a central bank. And after that, but throughout the world, you can look at every chart about prices. The price level until 1913 was relatively stable. There were fluctuations, but by 1900, the prices were the same like 1800. And what happens since central banks are there? We have prices going through the roof, and not by the statistics that the government lies are publishing. By private economists, the inflation is much higher. And by the way, the price of gold tells you what the real inflation is. That is the true measurement of inflation. But what I want to say, with the central banks, they had the money to make the government bigger. So in 1910, no European or American country had a government that was more than 12% of GDP. And now what are they? 50%. And that's why there's no growth and disaster all around. Because whatever the government touches is a complete failure. Because the government officials are all people, they studied, but never worked. That's the reality.
Wow. Okay, talk about a truth bomb. Grant, anything to add to that?
What do you add to that?
I don't know. I don't know.
It's impossible to take issue with that. The only thing I would add to Mark's point is that politics has become a profession. People go to school to study how to be a politician. It used to be public service that you did once you'd made your fortune, and you went to give something back, and you went into public service because you didn't need to be paid. Now you go to school at 18. What do you want to be when you grow up? A politician. Great. And so, of course, none of them have worked. They've never held a job in their lives. They've come straight through university. They go to study PPE at Oxford. They come out. They join the Young Conservative Club, the Young Labour Club. They end up in Parliament.
But we can't get rid of the central banks. So what do we do?
Why not?
Yeah,
I don't know. Why? How?
They screw up bad enough.
Marc, how would
French have
central
done it a few
banks
times.
be eliminated? I mean,
if you're the president of a country,
Sure.
we can eliminate the central bank.
so if Ron Paul was president, we
Or
definitely
give
would
them
have
no
had.
power.
Well, yeah, the first step, I guess, is you bring them into the government, which is even worse, I guess. But at least it's one foot out the door.
I don't know.
Well, let's talk about the gift they did give us, was this gold price. So, Marc, I haven't spoken to you in a few months, so I'd like to get your thoughts on when you saw this gold rally happen. What was Marc Faber thinking? You were at home and
I was thinking of Laura Stein and Jonathan Wellham and my friends who own gold. And of course, I was thinking of myself also because I became a little bit richer. But, you know, I don't measure my wealth by gold. I'm happy to have it because I strongly believe, I mean, you have to see the scenario when I grew up in the 1950s. My grandparents were very conservative people because they had lived through World War I and World War II, which were relatively unpleasant experiences, even for the rich Swiss, which they weren't at that time. But anyway, they always told me, you know, whatever you earn, you put 10% in a savings bank and Kantonalbank, because Kantonalbank was perceived to be safe. It is relatively safe, but in the 1990s, they also made a mess out of real estate loans, and quite a few should have gone bankrupt, but they survived because the government helped them. But anyway, I then had my grandmother gave me 50 francs for my birthday and Christmas and put it on a savings deposit. Now, recently, someone sent me an email and said, Mark, you're on a list of special people that the government cannot find. And I said, it's strange, but anyway, I contacted that bank, and they said, well, are you really Marcus Faber, and so forth. And they didn't want to pay me. But then by accident, I had a cousin whose son was the judge in that community, and he got the money. But the funny thing is, what was perceived to be at that time safe, namely a bank deposit with a Kantonalbank, was worth less than 20 years ago, because the fees they took all the time. This is, you know, if you're the bankers in here, you should know how you squeeze the clients and steal money. At least I hope you would know. Anyway, but I believe to hold money, paper money, is going to be a disaster. I also think that stocks, yes, they go up, but they don't go up all of them. The majority of stocks don't move anymore. It's just a handful of stocks that have driven the index higher. And you have stocks that are relatively cheap, but in general, if the question is, I'm sent to jail for 10 years, and you tell me, Mark, here is $1 million, and you have a choice to put it in whatever it is, but you have to put all of it in something. I think I would choose precious metals. Not necessarily gold,
right,
but precious metals.
You told me that the last time you were on a bus and this
yes,
dawned
I'm
on
consistent.
you, right?
Yes,
and you were thinking,
I'm still
you
married.
were thinking of going 100% in gold.
Yes.
Did you?
I mean, not now, because I think there are stocks and so forth. And I think I mentioned at the time that my preference is platinum at the moment.
Okay.
But I brought you
For me?
a little present.
Oh.
Yes. I mean, I'm not giving it to you.
Oh.
I'm giving it to you next year. But at least I want to show it to you.
Oh. Gee, thanks. Wow, it is beautiful. Okay. Well, I'm a gold girl, but
the
I
thing
like
is
platinum.
the platinum occasionally sells at a premium to gold. And I think it's going to happen. Because now I'm traveling around the world and telling every sovereign fund to squeeze the platinum market. Like the Huns. The Huns have died out.
You're creating a platinum squeeze. So you're liking platinum more than gold right now.
Yes, at the moment. I'm buying all the time a little gold. But right now, if you say, right now, or the last 18 months, I bought platinum and not additional gold. I'm never selling my gold because I have so much money, so I don't need to sell gold.
But what trajectory? But I don't know. How many people want to talk more gold or platinum? Who wants gold? More gold?
I love the idea that when anyone else does
And
this
who
experiment,
wants
Mark,
more platinum?
Okay, they
there's a
want
few,
to
there's a
know.
few, there's a few.
Okay, good.
Okay,
good,
so
good, good.
but what trajectory? What forecasts are you looking at, Mark?
My forecast is that platinum will sell at a premium to gold. Now, the premium could be reached by gold collapsing by, say, 80% and platinum staying at this level. Is not a prediction. I'm just saying, in theory, relationships can adjust through that. I mean, for instance, we talk about the Dow Jones gold relationship. In theory, gold could appreciate against the Dow Jones by the Dow or the S&P or the Nasdaq anyway going down 80% and gold down 20%. But in my view, and this is something that people should consider more than anything else, how do you lose the least money? And in my view, you're going to lose the least money in precious metals, physical, and hide it from the government, from the Kafka characters who will take everything from you.
But we're just getting back. Sorry to keep pressing on this, but why are you so bullish on platinum? What are the fundamentals?
The world today doesn't tick on fundamentals. The world ticks on illusions. And the fact is there is less platinum that comes to the market than gold and silver and so forth. The platinum market is tiny. That's why I'm telling you we should squeeze it, all of you. All of you. If you put your money together, we're going to squeeze the market.
I did not, Wow, okay. I like it.
You are a publicity person. Go and tell the world, squeeze the market.
I own a lot more gold than platinum.
Well, you're making a mistake.
Okay. Grant.
Yes. I'm just enjoying the show. This is great. I've got the best seat in the house.
I love it. Okay, gold over 4,000. You've been a believer in gold this whole time, and there's been many skeptics who think we are all crazy. So how did you feel, and where do you see it headed?
Well, first of all, I think it's interesting that this whole, you have to put your money in something for 10 years and leave it alone. Most people say they're going to go to a desert island. Mark's going to go to prison. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to read into that, Mark. I'm still trying to get my head around that. And with regards to the Cantonal Bank, I will share a story that a friend of mine told me when he had lunch with a Swiss banker. And the Swiss banker said to him, this is a true story, he said, would you like me to explain to you Swiss banking? My friend said, I would like that very much. He said, well, listen, the idea of Swiss banking is to take your money and our experience and turn it into our money and your experience. And that's about the best explanation of Swiss banking I've ever heard. I can't claim credit for that. That was my story. But no, gold, look, I mean, we've reached 4,000 incredibly quickly. I think even the staunchest of gold bulls has been surprised at how quickly it's gone up. And, you know, Rick put it perfectly this morning. For anyone that's heard Rick talk this morning, you know, if you can't stand a 20, 30% correction from here, you're in the wrong game. You're in this for the wrong reasons, because it's perfectly feasible that it could fall below the price of platinum, as Mark says. If you're a long-term believer in the gold story, I think the story is just getting started. The price is the price. The price is going to do what it does. But the reasons for owning gold and precious metals in general, I don't want to restrict it to gold, I think are getting stronger. And for a lot of people, the price weakens their argument. So, well, I don't own gold here because it's run up from 3,000. That's purely a decision made on price. And if that's the way you look at precious metals, that's totally fine, but you're speculating in them. So there's no point in talking about a long-term case for holding gold. But I think the story is getting stronger by the day, frankly.
I want to bring up the US dollar, and I brought this up in my keynote yesterday as well because of some talks I've had with sources in Washington that the US is finally waking up and almost panicking over de-dollarization, and there's two paths they're potentially looking at. One is convincing countries like Argentina to perhaps dollarize, or countries like Lebanon to perhaps dollarize, or they're looking at stablecoins as a way to stop a potential de-dollarization trend. Marc, thoughts on this? I'm almost afraid, but thoughts on this?
I mean, it's easy to answer this question. Look around this room. I mean, I don't know exactly, but let's guess the average age of people in this room. I don't think there is anyone who is under 25 years old here. Are they?
There's one.
There's one.
There's one.
We got one.
Yes.
Who?
He's studying. He's already studying to be a plastic surgeon. He's
Yes,
extremely
it's nice
impressive.
to meet you. I'm also under 25. But in general, there are very few people that are young that are in this room. The average age, I would say, is, say, 45, 50. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's about.
Number two, the young people, they don't buy gold. If you look at the ETFs, there has been selling of ETFs in a bull market. This is most unusual. I've never seen a bull market where people are this bearish. And by the way, this is a room full of gold and precious metals bulls. Let's make a survey and be honest. Who in this room we take all assets, real estate and stocks and bonds and whatever you have and pleasure boats, all assets, and then we compare it to gold. Who has more than 50% of his assets in gold? This is very good, very intelligent audience. And who has more than 20%? Yes, good. And who has only 5%? This is very bad.
Please leave the room.
No, I mean, but you understand, this is now an audience that is not the stock audience. You go to a conference of stock investors. Most portfolio managers in the US, they have less than 1% in gold shares. This is the reality. And I think the bull market will end when people will have much more exposure to gold and silver and platinum, especially platinum. I need to convince you.
I want some.
Maybe we can go dancing tonight.
Marc, my husband and children are here. You could take the kids.
No, but you understand, the issue is here. Young people, they are the Generation Z, is in stable coins and bitcoins, which are highly questionable investments, highly questionable. My view is that they are basically, the fault line there is you can have bitcoins, and every country can have all sorts of coins. And at the end, you have zillions of coins, and what are they going to be worse? I mean, I think that the issue is, can you multiply something? Paper money is easy to multiply. And these stable coins and stuff is easy to multiply. I wouldn't do it, but Mr. Trump and his family is very happy to do it. And whatever he does is questionable. in terms of business.
Okay. So does it save the US dollar?
The US dollar is also paper money. It doesn't matter whether it's a dollar or a euro or a Swiss francs. Over time, paper money loses its purchasing power. You say we are in a bull market for gold. I say maybe not. Maybe we are in a colossal bear market for the purchasing power of paper monies around the world, not just the dollar. Others are not much better. But there are countries that don't have inflation at the moment because of poor economics and additional supplies. I mean, China had a sort of deflationary impact on the world by supplying goods. There was there was someone. He's the largest distributor of cars in Europe. The Chinese, they can produce cars at a fraction of the Europeans.
But on the topic of China,
Yes.
and on how they're building a super monetary highway linked to gold.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How serious should we be taking this?
Seriously.
Okay, tell me, what do you know?
I won't tell you.
Until I buy platinum. No. Tell us what you know.
We go dancing first, and then I tell you. No, I don't know the details, but I think the idea of BRICS countries, I mean, you know this probably better than I do. The idea is that some countries have, I mean, there has been a shift in the balance of economic power in the world from the Western world that has, say, 12% of global population, Europe and the US, and the emerging economies that have, say, 88% of the population to these countries, and they do not want to have just a trading system based on US dollars. And so that will change. Now, will it change tomorrow? Maybe not. And maybe the dollar for the next 6 months is a strong currency, because the others, I mean, you look at our central bank in Europe, Lagarde, is America. Nothing is better in Europe than in the US, except the food. But my sense, within 10 years, big changes will occur, and the dollar will no longer be the reserve currency.
Wow.
Within 10 years.
Wow.
And I think what is overlooked and we never talk about, I'm not saying it's inevitable, but war cycles, if you look at the cycle series, the economic cycles, financial cycles, agricultural cycles, the war cycle, the conditions are perfect for war, perfect. All the conditions are in place. Now, it doesn't need to necessarily lead to war. I mean, we can postpone it, but the conditions have never been better for war than right now.
What's the spark?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you're asking me some difficult questions.
No, but I'm getting the answers. You see, you said in 10 years, this will happen. This is what I want. Okay, good.
It may not happen in 10 years, but the likelihood is that it will happen.
Okay.
And the spark can be anything. It can be like the Japanese, you know, they had in the Second World War, they all had false flags. And then during the Vietnam War, there were false flags and so forth. So all you need is a crazy general somewhere in the world who launches some stupid warlike action. And nowadays, we have the power to destroy everything. Everything. This is a dangerous situation. I'm not saying it will happen, but when everything is destroyed, I prefer to have a kilo of gold or gold coins than a Bitcoin nobody will be able to utilize because the internet will not function. They will switch it off or they will...
Blackouts?
Yes, blackout.
Black swans on your watch, Grant.
To be optimistic.
To be optimistic. I mean, with the very little time we have left, what keeps you up at night?
Well, now, what he said. I mean, before
We're
that,
all
I
having
was sleeping
nightmares.
just fine until I sat next
I
to
even
Marc.
just threw out my notes, so we're just,
No, look, with regards to de-dollarization, there are two competing systems being built in plain sight. One is the one that the Chinese are trying to build that will ultimately revolve around gold. The US, through the Genius Act, is going to try and create one revolving around stablecoins. Stablecoins are a means to generate the necessary demand for treasuries, which is needed to keep the lights on. And I think people are going to have a chance to choose between a system that is familiar in that it's based around the dollar, but it is purely fiat and it is somewhat coercive in nature, but it feels like slipping into a warm bath, or an alternative that will ultimately have some kind of physical metal backing to it. And I think people will be very surprised how many people choose the latter. I think the assumption is that the US is the global hegemon and people, I mean, why are we talking about, would it be a good thing to dollarize the Lebanon? I mean, how's that going to make a difference? I mean, these ideas that we're going to dollarize these countries, that's not going to make a difference. Dollarizing Argentina, it's not going to make a difference. It sends a message, but it doesn't make a difference. And I think that's where we are. We're in the point now where people feel they need to send messages, but I don't know that any of those messages are going to make a difference because, to Marc's point, I think the damage has been done. Precious metals, as Pierre said, are going to come back into the monetary system. Gold is being remonetized, not through choice, because no politician would ever choose to put gold back at the center of the monetary system, but through necessity. And that necessity is the destruction of the purchasing power of paper currencies. So what keeps me up at night is the things that I've talked about and the things I've heard at conferences like this and the things that Marc's written about for many, many years being right. And, as Rick said this morning, if you want $10,000 gold, be careful what you wish for.
And I'm happy you mentioned the Genius Act because I can't believe how little, or maybe I can believe how little press it has received. I mean, most people have never even heard of it.
That's the genius of it.
People include, not in this room, but I mean, folks on the street are just, what's the Genius Act? But I mean, this will be a game changer.
Because if you're into the crypto world, you're following every development, you understand what it is. If you're not in the crypto world, you hear it's a stablecoin act, you immediately switch off.
Right.
And you shouldn't, because these things tend to be Trojan horses, and I suspect that's one.
Okay, with the time we have left, just let's wrap with parting, touching remarks that will change people's lives.
I was going to say buy
better.
platinum, but that's been thrown out the water now.
Grant, just final thoughts for everyone watching at home and for the fine people in the
Look,
audience.
I've been coming to this conference, and Jessica, thank you again for inviting me. It's always a fantastic time here for many years now, and I see many familiar faces coming here year after year. And that means there are a lot of people in this room that have been bullish on precious metals for quite some time. It's felt a lonely place to be at times, but if you've thought about it and you have a base case for owning them, you're slowly seeing all those reasons come true, and the price is really the last consideration. So I think everybody in here has been on the right track for quite some time, and if this is your first time at this conference, you're on the right track. Don't worry about the price so much. Look at what people are saying. Look at the fact that the most price-insensitive buyers in the world and central banks are buying as much gold as they can get their hands on, and these guys can literally print money out of thin air and spend it on anything they want, including monkey JPEGs, but they are choosing to buy gold with it. And as I said in a presentation I gave earlier this year, if they feel a need to own gold, you better believe we need to own gold too.
Dr. Faber, last words from you.
The last words.
So you get the last word.
Yes. Well, I think, if you look at precious metals, there are different options. As I said, it's silver, gold, platinum. And then the question arises, do you want to own all your assets in physical gold, in precious metals in a safe deposit box somewhere, or buried in your garden? You would have to have a large garden. But I think within the precious metals sector, and if I look at stocks, and the valuations, oil stocks are cheap relative to, say, the FANG and FANG-related stocks and semiconductors and so forth. And gold mining shares, the mining sector, is very inexpensive. It's gone up, but it's still, relative to everything else, very, very depressed. And as an investor in precious metals, I think, I don't want to advertise your conference, but I have to say that some mining companies are very good value. And I think this conference, as do other conferences, they offer the opportunity for investors to meet with these miners. And I think there's an opportunity there. And in some cases, really a great opportunity. These are my last words.
No, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate how you speak without filter. It is very refreshing. Freedom of speech is alive in this room, and I am here for it. Grant Williams and Dr. Marc Faber, it was an honor. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jessica.